The mahogany doors of the Cimax Capital boardroom swung open slowly, but the silence inside was immediate and absolute. Click, click. Her heels landed with authority against the polished floor, each step deliberate, calm, and commanding. Angel Mark didn't wear revenge. She wore elegance. Poise, quiet power that turned heads without a single word. Her fitted blazer hugged a frame sharpened by resilience, not vanity. Her hair was slicked into a regal bun, edges laid with care, and her earrings shimmered like they belonged in a crown. But what struck the room deepest wasn't what she wore. It was her posture. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't bow. The whispers started before she reached the head seat. Wait, is that Angel? Didn't he divorce her? She used to sleep in a shelter, right? She's the keynote investor? On the left side of the glass conference room, a senior journalist clutched his pen like he'd just seen a ghost in red-bottomed heels. On the right, an executive assistant nudged her colleague, wide-eyed, trying to mouth, "That's her." The ex-wife, and directly across from Angel, frozen, jaw tight, caught between disbelief and regret, was Oliver Sam, her ex-husband. The man who once told her she didn't belong in his world now sat staring at the world she owned. His Armani suit looked like armor. His tie was perfect. But the cold confidence he was known for, gone. Angel didn't gloat. She simply placed her leather portfolio on the table, slid her chair back with grace, and took the head seat reserved for a lead negotiator. One by one, the remaining investors nodded respectfully. She had arrived, not as a guest, not as a trophy wife, as a decision-maker, as the final say, as a CEO. And in the stillness of that moment, just before the meeting began, Angel's eyes locked with Oliver's, not to revisit the past, but to confirm what she already knew. She didn't need to say anything. Her success had already spoken. The conference room fell so silent you could hear the tension settle across the polished table. But Angel didn't rush. She breathed slowly, her shoulders relaxed, her chin lifted, a woman who no longer carried the weight of proving herself to anyone. A soft narration flowed in, addressing every person who had ever been underestimated. Have you ever given your whole heart to someone, only for them to walk away as if you meant nothing? Have you ever poured strength into a relationship, a job, a dream, and still ended up discarded? A murmur shifted through the viewer's imagination, making the moment personal, not distant. Have you ever been pushed so low that you wondered if your story had reached its final page? Angel's fingers lightly brushed the table's edge, a gesture not of nervousness but of remembering. She remembered the nights she cried silently so no one would hear. She remembered stepping out of that penthouse with 2 suitcases and dignity as her only shield. She remembered strangers passing her without a second glance while she tried to keep herself from falling apart. Now, here she sat, not as someone seeking approval, but as someone who rebuilt her worth from nothing. Her voice entered gently, the same voice that once spoke softly to comfort herself on cold nights. Some of you know exactly how that feels. The narration continued, connecting with every soul watching. Maybe life knocked you down so hard you questioned if you'd ever rise again. Maybe someone looked at you and decided you weren't enough. Maybe you've survived nights when the world felt too heavy, and mornings when your courage was the only thing that carried you out of bed. Angel slowly opened her portfolio, and the simple motion felt like a chapter turning, not just in her story, but in the hearts of those watching. The camera lingered on Oliver's reaction. His eyes darted between her and the documents she laid on the table. He hadn't expected this version of her, steady, unwavering, beyond his reach. And the voiceover made the moment even more direct. If you've ever been hurt by the people who promised to love you, if you've ever been broken in places no one could see, if you've ever stood alone, wondering how much more you could take, then Angel's story is your story too. Angel lifted her gaze again, her expression calm, mature, healed. She was living proof. Sometimes the heart that gets shattered becomes the strongest one in the room. Oliver Sam had sat through hundreds of board meetings, mergers, acquisitions, corporate takeovers. He was used to holding the room, used to commanding attention. But not today, Today the air had shifted, not because of numbers or projections, because of her, Angel Mark. Her name wasn't listed as a participant, it was listed as an owner. Oliver's hand, once steady, now twitched against the water glass beside him. He kept glancing at her, as if trying to catch a mistake in her face, a sign she didn't belong. But all he saw was a woman who'd become untouchable. She led the discussion with clarity, spoke with elegance. Her insights on market positioning were sharp. Every board member, even the skeptics, leaned in when she spoke. No stutter, no hesitation, no hint of the woman he left behind. And just as Oliver tried to gather himself, the conference doors opened again. All eyes turned. In walked Aidan Mason, tailored charcoal suit, subtle silver cufflinks, calm, deliberate steps. But what stunned the room wasn't his arrival, it was the way he walked straight to Angel, and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. The gesture was subtle, respectful, intimate in its sincerity. Angel looked up and smiled at him, not nervously, but warmly. Aidan nodded back, offering silent reassurance before taking the seat beside her. And that was the moment Oliver broke. His eyes narrowed. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but nothing came out. This was the man she once mentioned in passing, when they were married. Aidan Mason, the soft-spoken CEO with backbone. He remembered brushing it off back then, certain no man could ever compete. But now, that man sat beside Angel like they were equals, partners, like they shared something. Aidan didn't even look at Oliver. He didn't need to. His focus was on Angel, and that alone made Oliver feel irrelevant. Chioma, seated at Oliver's right, noticed the shift. She leaned in, whispering tightly, "Is that who I think it is?" Oliver didn't respond. He couldn't. Because in one single moment, he saw it clearly, the woman he once discarded was now the woman the entire room respected. The man she was with didn't need to flaunt wealth or power. He had her trust, and that was something Oliver could never buy back. The boardroom hadn't moved in nearly a minute. Oliver's throat tightened as Angel flipped to the final page in her report, the same proposal he once said she'd never understand, let alone contribute to. She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. She knew he was watching how the woman he tossed aside was now holding his future between her fingertips. And then the unspoken question rippled across the room. And the screen, how did she get here? How did the same woman forced out of a penthouse with nothing but 2 suitcases end up as the name everyone whispered in corporate circles? How did the woman he used to ignore over breakfast become the one investors now flew across the country to meet? How did the girl who once cried in church pews at midnight, how did the wife he divorced without remorse become the CEO whose signature could determine whether his company would survive? And most of all, how did the woman who had no place to sleep become the woman loved so quietly, so completely, by a man who never needed to be loud to be loyal? Because what sat in that room wasn't just power, it was rebirth, it was purpose. It was a woman who had every reason to hate, but instead chose to rebuild. And that, Vic, is where we pause the present and take your audience back to the beginning. Victor family, before we take you back to where this all began, we need you. Drop a comment below if you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or left to rise on your own. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Victor Storytime right now, so more people can hear stories like Angel's, stories of faith, resilience, and love that builds, not breaks. Let's get into it. Before she ever wore heels into a boardroom or sat across from billionaires, Angel Mark was a little girl on the south side of Baltimore, with chalk on her fingers and hope in her chest. Her mother, Diane Mark, worked 2 nursing home shifts nearly every day, yet somehow she still managed to braid Angel's hair every Saturday night for church, slip a few dollars in her lunch bag on Mondays, and smile like she wasn't carrying the weight of their entire world. Diane was the kind of woman who taught through action. Her lessons didn't come in lectures, they came in devotion. "Baby, you lead with your heart," she used to say, running her hands gently through Angel's thick curls. But don't ever let this world harden it. Angel took those words seriously. Their 2-bedroom apartment was in a building with paint that peeled off the walls and neighbors who argued loud through the thin walls. But inside that small space, Angel and her mom built something sacred, joy. It was there, over pots of collard greens and gospel music humming from the radio, that Angel learned how to love people deeply. How to laugh even when things were tight. How to be present even when life was pushing forward too fast. Sundays were sacred, not just for church but for community. They'd walk 3 blocks to a small black church with cracked pews and a pastor who preached with tears in his voice. After service, the congregation would gather in the church basement to eat, share, and lift each other up. Angel was always the one hugging people, helping clean up, and sneaking extra cornbread for the older ladies to take home. She became known as the light in the room, the girl whose smile made people feel like tomorrow might just be all right. That joy didn't come from what she had. It came from who she was. Even as a teenager, Angel carried her joy like a badge of honor. She didn't see struggle as shameful. She saw it as fuel. While other girls flipped through beauty magazines dreaming of fame, Angel was sketching wedding layouts, event centerpieces, and mood boards. She had a little journal, tattered at the edges, where she'd write brand names she dreamed of launching one day, things like Events by Angel, Mark My Style, and Rooted and Regal. In school, she joined the student council not for popularity, but so she could organize the end-of-year dance. She stayed after class to help teachers decorate the gym for back-to-school night. She volunteered at the community center, planning youth events, mentoring younger girls, and rearranging the resource board so it actually looked inviting. There was always something inside her that longed to create beauty, not just visual, but emotional, a space where people felt seen. At her small community college, Angel juggled classes with 2 part-time jobs. On weekday evenings, she stocked shelves at a local party store. On weekends, she worked as a server at an event hall, quietly watching how planners ran the show. But it was her Saturdays that lit her up the most, when she helped her neighbor Miss Bernice set up for birthday parties, church anniversaries, or community fundraisers. Miss Bernice was the first one to pull Angel aside and say, "You got the eye, baby. You don't just decorate rooms, you lift spirits." Angel smiled, tucked the compliment in her heart, and kept pushing. Faith remained her anchor. No matter how busy life got, she made time for Sunday service, for quiet prayers at night, and for calling her mother even when she was bone-tired. She didn't have much, but she had a dream, to build her own event and decor brand, one that brought elegance to everyday people, one that gave beauty to those who rarely got to experience it. And she believed, deep down, that one day, that dream would find a way. Angel's presence was the kind that changed a room without changing the volume. She didn't demand attention. She inspired it. When her friends had problems, they called Angel, not because she always had answers, but because she listened, fully, without rushing, without judgment. She remembered birthdays, sent encouraging texts out of the blue, showed up when no one else did. Even when her own bank account was stretched thin, she found ways to give, buying a friend's baby shower balloons on discount, baking banana bread for the local food pantry, or helping an elder neighbor clean their porch. Angel's strength didn't come from perfection. She had moments of doubt, moments where her voice shook or tears came without warning. But even in those moments, she reached for faith instead of fear. She wrote Bible verses on sticky notes and placed them in her bathroom mirror. She kept a worn copy of The Purpose-Driven Life in her bag, and she prayed, not just for herself, but for others. Hope wasn't something she performed. It was her language. She believed in love, in second chances, in dreams that took time. And though the world had tried to convince her otherwise, she held fast to the belief that kindness wasn't weakness. It was power. That belief would soon be tested. The Baltimore skyline glowed orange that night as Angel adjusted the final centerpiece at the charity gala. She wasn't a guest. She was helping with floral arrangements through a volunteer program tied to the community college. She wore a simple black dress and ballet flats that had seen better days. Her curls were pulled into a soft updo. She didn't wear flashy makeup or designer shoes. She wasn't there to impress anyone. But across the room, near the wine bar, stood Oliver Sam. He was everything she wasn't. On paper. White, polished, powerful. A billionaire CEO from New York, in town to represent his firm's latest donation to the Arts Foundation. Oliver noticed Angel not because she stood out, but because she didn't try to. She was laughing with a vendor, tucking a piece of greenery behind her ear, arms covered in floral dust. There was a light in her that cut through the artificial shine of the room. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Angel smiled politely and returned to her arrangement. But Oliver watched her, not creepily, but curiously. Later that evening, he found himself beside her at the coffee table. "You arranged these?" he asked, gesturing to the centerpiece. She nodded, still sipping from a paper cup. "Just helped. I love small details. They can shift the whole energy of a room." He raised an eyebrow. "That's a rare way to see things." She tilted her head. "Or maybe it's the only way that matters." Their conversation lasted 20 minutes, then 40. It never veered into flirtation, just two people from different worlds, meeting in the middle. Before he left, he asked for her card. She didn't have one. Just a folded piece of paper where she wrote her name and number. Angel thought that would be the end of it, but it was only the beginning. 3 weeks later, Angel received an invitation to lunch. Not from some assistant, from Oliver directly. They met at a quiet bistro where he cut to the point. "Angel," he said, "this may sound unusual, but I need to ask you something bold." She blinked. "Go on." He explained that his father's estate had placed a clause in the inheritance transfer. In order to receive full control of the family conglomerate, he had to be married for at least 6 months. Legally, publicly. "I don't need a wife," he clarified. "I need a partner, for optics, nothing more. I'll provide full financial compensation. No intimacy, no obligation beyond the agreement. You'd be free to walk away after the term, and you'd walk away with capital to start your own business." Angel stared at him, stunned. "Why me?" "Because you're the only woman I've met in years who isn't impressed by money, and who makes spaces better just by being in them." She didn't say yes immediately. She prayed, talked to her mother, cried. But eventually she said yes, not because of desperation, but because she believed. Maybe, just maybe, this arrangement could turn into something real. Maybe he just needed time. Maybe behind his polished detachment was a heart still learning how to beat. Angel told herself it was temporary, but the vows, once spoken, would lead to a chapter she never expected. The penthouse was silent, not peaceful, not still. Silent, in the way that reminded Angel Mark she didn't belong in it. It sat 40 stories above Manhattan, its floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a skyline that never slept. White marble floors reflected the light from chandeliers that looked more like art pieces than anything practical. Every corner of the space was meticulously styled by professionals. Glass, chrome, and black leather. Cold, modern, and expensive. But it didn't feel lived in. It didn't feel like home. Angel rolled her suitcase into the foyer, her soft-soled shoes barely making a sound against the marble. No welcome note, no open arms. Just a polite nod from Oliver's assistant, who handed her a keycard, mumbled a schedule of expectations, and disappeared into the elevator. She stood there for a moment, staring at the massive portraitless walls, the steel fixtures, the chilling quiet. This was what she'd agreed to, a marriage not built on love, but contract. Yet she still hoped. Maybe the silence would eventually speak. Maybe the man she saw glimpses of during their first few meetings, the one who paused when she spoke, who listened without interruption, would find his way back to her. Angel unpacked slowly. Her side of the closet was practically empty except for the 2 suitcases she brought. She laid out her devotional journal, framed a picture of her mom, and added a small lavender plant to the windowsill, trying, even if the space refused to welcome her. She cooked that night. Nothing fancy. Just pan-seared salmon, roasted vegetables, and brown rice, the kind of meal her mom always called simple love. When Oliver returned, he barely acknowledged the scent drifting from the kitchen. He loosened his tie, poured a glass of scotch, and nodded toward the table. "Thanks." They ate in near silence. He didn't ask how her day was. He didn't comment on the food. He didn't even look up. This was not the warmth of Baltimore. This was not Sunday dinners, church laughter, or gospel music over greens. This was the beginning of a cold arrangement. And Angel, ever the believer, lit a candle in the center of that sterile dining table, not because he noticed, but because she still had hope. The days that followed became a rhythm of effort and silence. Angel started waking up early to make fresh coffee, not because she had to, but because it was how she was raised. In her world, service wasn't subservience, it was love. She placed a cup near his briefcase each morning. Sometimes he took it, most times he didn't. She tried to personalize the space, placed throw pillows on the sleek couch, added soft lighting in the hallway, hung subtle art that reminded her of home. She even left a hand-painted quote above the guest bathroom mirror that read, "Warmth isn't decoration, it's intention." When Oliver noticed, he said nothing. One Friday, she invited him to a community outreach gala hosted by her old college mentor. "It's not black tie," she explained, "just people celebrating small wins." He agreed, hesitantly. They went. Angel wore a deep emerald dress, elegant but modest, and introduced Oliver to several mentors and community leaders. She laughed freely, hugged old friends, and even joined a spontaneous line dance with the staff. She was alive, and for a brief moment, Oliver smiled. He watched her as if seeing something unfamiliar, something honest. That night when they returned home, he said, "You're good at that." At what? People, connecting. Her heart lifted. But that was all he said, and by Monday the distance between them returned like fog. Still tried to start conversations. Still asked about his work, but the more she leaned in, the more he pulled away, into meetings, travel, and closed doors. She found herself scrolling through social media alone, watching her friends get engaged, celebrating baby showers, laughing with husbands who took their phones out to show them off. Angel wasn't envious. She was quietly aching, not for things, but for effort. Oliver Sam was precise, efficient, and polished in every way, but when it came to matters of the heart, he was absent. Emotionally, he remained behind walls she could never scale. He never raised his voice, never insulted her, never told her she wasn't enough. But he also never listened, not really. When Angel spoke about her dream business, the event brand she still dreamed of starting, he nodded distractedly, phone in hand, eyes on incoming emails. When she tried to share childhood memories, funny church stories, or her favorite comfort foods, he gave a faint smile and changed the topic. His affection never evolved beyond distant politeness. No dates, no touches, no curiosity. Angel would have preferred a fight, a moment where she could at least feel something from him. But there was no fire, no confrontation. Just cold routines. Once, she bought tickets to a black theatre performance in Brooklyn, a beautiful blend of spoken word, dance, and live jazz. She left the envelope on his desk with a handwritten note. "Maybe we could go together?" He didn't mention it. That night, she went alone. When she returned, the envelope sat untouched on the same desk. She cried quietly in the shower, biting her fist, begging her heart not to break so loudly it woke the silence. Despite the emotional freeze, Angel stayed soft, not weak, soft. She prayed for him. She left small notes in his planner, encouragements before big meetings. She folded his laundry even when he told her not to, not because he expected it, but because it was her way of showing care. She even baked lemon squares one evening, his mother's favorite recipe, which he once mentioned during a passing conversation. She placed them in the fridge with a sticky note. "Thought of your mom today. Hope work went well." The next morning the plate was untouched. Days turned into weeks. Angel went from hopeful to patient to emotionally exhausted. She started sleeping in the guest room, not because he asked her to, because she couldn't keep lying beside someone who made her feel invisible. Still, she didn't leave. Not yet. There was something inside her that kept whispering, "He's not cruel, he's just closed. Maybe if you stay kind long enough, the door will open." But kindness in a one-sided marriage slowly starts to feel like silence, and Angel was getting tired of being quiet. It started subtly. Oliver's late nights became routine. Meetings ran over, he said. Last-minute call with Singapore, flight got delayed. Angel didn't pry, until she didn't. One night, as she was walking past his office, she heard a woman's voice on speaker. "I don't know how you live with her in that place. You don't even sound like yourself anymore." She didn't recognize the voice, but she recognized the tone. That was no assistant. That was intimacy. Her heart pounded as she stood outside that door, lips parted, fingers numb. She didn't confront him that night. She went to the guest room, closed the door, slid down the wall and held her knees. The man who once admired her authenticity was now hiding parts of his life while still reaping the benefit of her presence. Angel wasn't naive. She knew betrayal didn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it came with silence, locked screens, and the steady disconnection of someone who stopped choosing you. And just like that, the storm began. Her name was Keoma, and her presence lingered in Oliver's world long before Angel ever knew it. She wasn't loud. She didn't post selfies or chase spotlight. She didn't have to. Keoma was born into status, educated at elite academies, and refined in rooms that whispered wealth through every crystal glass and curated smile. She was also part of Oliver's past, someone he'd crossed paths with in international finance circles. Their families knew each other. Their assistants had each other's numbers. They understood one another's rhythms, expectations, lifestyle codes. She was, in every visible way, Oliver's match. Where Angel decorated the penthouse with handwritten notes and soft candles, Keoma sent text messages in short, clipped sentences. Board moved to 4. That acquisition, doc, lunch, yes or no. It wasn't a physical affair. Not yet. But it was the kind that creeps in when silence grows roots. Oliver began answering Keoma's calls late at night. Voice lowered, pacing his office while Angel lay in the next room. He sent her slides for review. They discussed board dynamics, offshore trusts, and estate planning with a familiarity that went beyond business. And when she laughed, it wasn't out of joy. It was the quiet laugh of a woman who knew she was winning. Angel didn't know her yet, but her shadow was already darkening the space between them. It was a Thursday evening. Rain tapped against the windows like a gentle warning. Angel had just returned from a small networking event at a creative studio in Brooklyn, one she'd gone to alone. She kicked off her heels at the door, holding a takeout bag with sesame tofu and ginger tea. Oliver hadn't responded to her. Want me to bring you something? Text. Not unusual. She walked down the hall toward the kitchen, passing his office. The door slightly cracked. At first she wasn't listening, until she heard her voice. You can't keep dragging this out, Oliver. She's a placeholder. She doesn't belong in your world. Angel froze mid-step. The voice was clear, confident, foreign in tone but familiar in context. Then Oliver's voice. Just give it time. It'll be handled. Angel's chest tightened. Keoma laughed softly. Handled like your conscience? Come on. The arrangement served its purpose. It's time. There was a pause. Then, Oliver, you're right. This has run its course. Angel's grip loosened on the bag in her hand. It dropped softly to the hardwood floor. She backed away, quietly, as if noise might betray her strength. Her breath shook, not from surprise, but from confirmation. The whispers she'd silenced for weeks now shouted in her ears. She didn't confront him that night. She slept in the guest room, curled against the wall like she used to do as a child when storms came too close. Angel stepped into the kitchen, wearing her soft grey cardigan and socks, remnants of a woman still trying to believe there was something salvageable. Oliver was at the counter, scrolling his tablet, coffee in hand. She walked up and spoke calmly. How long have you been planning this? He looked up. Planning what? She tilted her head. You know what I heard? He hesitated, not out of guilt but calculation. Then he sighed. Angel, let's not drag this out. She blinked. So that's it? After everything? It was an arrangement. We both understood that going in. She stepped closer, voice still steady. I understood hope. I understood the chance that it might become real. Oliver shook his head, setting the cup down. This isn't personal. Angel let out a short, sharp breath. It was never not personal for me. He stared at her. I'm filing the paperwork today. Her throat burned, not from heartbreak, but from the chill of his detachment. No apology, no explanation. There's nothing more to say, he replied flatly. This arrangement has run its course. He walked past her, untouched by the damage he left behind. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a slap. It was the final quiet death of something that had never been fully alive. By the end of the week, the papers arrived, hand-delivered by a firm associate who didn't meet her eyes. Angel sat at the glass kitchen table, staring at the stack of legal jargon that reduced months of her life to a signature. There were no promises honored, no clauses granting her business seed money. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. Not for him, but for her. It was the act of release, of reclaiming what little control she still had. She placed the papers in the envelope and set them by the door. Never followed up, never asked if she was okay. And perhaps that silence hurt more than the betrayal itself. 3 days later, his assistant called. "Hi, Ms. Mark. Per Mr. Sam's request, we need you to vacate the penthouse within 72 hours. A moving company can assist if you need." There was no severance check, no bridge to her next chapter, no follow-up conversation. He hadn't just ended the marriage, he ended her stability. The penthouse, once echoing with her laughter and attempts at connection, now felt like a museum of her own naivety. She packed slowly, folded every blouse, wrapped her mother's framed photo with care, boxed the throw pillows she had sewn with bright colours, all now too bright for a world that hadn't protected her. There were no long speeches, no grand exits, just a woman folding up pieces of her life, silently praying she wouldn't break during the process. Angel was waiting for the elevator with her last 2 suitcases when she heard heels clicking behind her. Sharp, confident, measured, Chioma. She didn't say hello, just walked up with a smirk and paused beside her. "Didn't think you'd pack so light," Chioma said. Angel didn't respond. Chioma glanced at her manicured nails. "For what it's worth, I'm glad he finally let it go. You were sweet, but miscast." Angel turned slowly. "Is that what you tell yourself to feel better?" Chioma raised an eyebrow. "You were a temporary chapter. I'm his future." Angel stepped forward, face calm. "Then I hope you enjoy the silence, the locked doors, the way he disappears while you're still speaking." Chioma blinked, just once. The elevator dinged. Angel stepped inside and turned, her voice low but clear. "I may be leaving with 2 bags, but you're the one inheriting a man who doesn't know how to love." The doors closed. No tears, no collapse, just quiet dignity. And with that, Angel left the building, with no money, no plan, but with a strength even Chioma would never understand. The doorman didn't make eye contact as Angel stepped out of the penthouse lobby for the last time. She rolled 2 suitcases down the slick sidewalk, the wheels bumping over the uneven curb. The New York air hit different now, heavier, colder, less forgiving. The clouds above loomed low, threatening rain, and yet her hands trembled not from the weather, but from the weight of what had just collapsed around her. She had nowhere to go. No friends in the city with spare bedrooms, no family members with space. Her mother had passed the previous year, and most of her cousins were living paycheck to paycheck in cramped apartments across Baltimore. Angel stood at the corner of 5th and 47th, looking up at the glass building she used to call home. It had never truly felt like hers, and now it wasn't even temporary. She thought of calling someone, just to say she was okay, even if she wasn't. But what do you say when you've been discarded like packaging after a gift's been opened? She tried a few hotels, all either overpriced or booked. She called a room rental service, but was told there was a long waiting list and background verification needed. She even tried messaging a few church groups online, hoping for emergency support, but no one responded fast enough. By nightfall, Angel stood outside a local shelter with her bags and a thin smile. The woman at the desk didn't recognize her, which was almost comforting. "Name? Angel Mark. Any children?" She shook her head. "First time?" "Yeah," she whispered. The intake process was quiet. Clinical. She was assigned a cot in a shared room with 4 other women. There was a curtain for privacy, if you pulled it right. One of the women snored. Another cried in her sleep. Angel lay there that first night facing the wall and didn't speak, not out of fear, out of disbelief. She was the wife of a billionaire. Now she was one more number on a clipboard. The days blurred. The shelter had a curfew, breakfast at 6, lunch at 11, lights out by 9. Angel did everything right. She kept to herself, cleaned up after others, even organized a drawer system for the hygiene products no one else touched. But sleeping there wasn't always possible. Some nights, the space was too full. Other nights, the anxiety was louder than any comfort. So she walked, found a bench in front of Grace and Mercy Baptist Church, just off Madison. The church kept its porch light on through the night. That made her feel a little safer. She'd sit there, knees drawn to her chest, hoodie pulled up, pretending to read or pray or text, whatever would keep people from asking too many questions. And when her eyes closed, she dreamed not of Oliver or Kioma or revenge, but of warm cornbread, her mother's voice, and the smell of pine during Christmas. On Sundays, she still went inside, not because she wanted answers, but because she needed reminders. Sometimes she'd slip in early, kneel at the back, and listen to the choir rehearse. That music, even when off-key, felt like a thread keeping her tied to something sacred. She didn't blame God, she just wondered where he was hiding. Angel didn't have much. But what she had, she still gave. In the shelter, she noticed a young woman named Lita, barely 20, pregnant, and jittery with anxiety. She couldn't sleep through the night and flinched every time someone walked near her bunk. Angel began saving her apples and granola bars to quietly slip into Lita's bag. "Eat," she'd whisper. Lita would nod, eyes wet but thankful. Another woman named Taneka had 3 kids and spoke broken English. Angel helped her fill out a school meal form. She sat beside her during the intake interview and translated where she could. "You got this," Angel would say, gently rubbing her shoulder. No one knew she used to live in a penthouse, that she once organized charity galas and hosted industry panels, that she once had a business plan sitting in an envelope, waiting to be funded. To them, she was just Angel, the quiet woman who never complained, who gave away her extra pair of socks, who remembered birthdays even in chaos. But inside, she was starving. Not just for food, though there were days her stomach twisted until she could barely breathe. She was starving for a moment of grace, still. She gave, because that's who she was, and not even heartbreak could change that. It rained hard that night, not a light drizzle, a downpour that turned curbs into rivers and umbrellas into failures. Angel's shoes were soaked through. Her jacket stuck to her body. The city moved on around her, fast, loud, indifferent. The shelter was full. She had tried 3 others, all at capacity. She stood under a narrow ledge beside a closed bakery, the neon sign flickering weakly through the rain. She didn't know who to call. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to cry, but the tears came anyway, hot, angry, confused. She didn't sit. She collapsed, legs folding beneath her, until she crouched, soaked, forehead pressed to her knees. And in a voice no one heard, she whispered, "God, please, don't let this be the end of my story. Not like this. Not on the sidewalk, not forgotten, wet, invisible." From across the street, a car slowed. Headlights lit up her drenched figure, but she didn't look up. She thought it was just another cab passing by, but it wasn't. It was the moment the storm inside her met the turning point of fate. Rain fell in heavy sheets across Midtown, drenching the city like it had a point to prove. Angel sat beneath the half-broken awning of a closed coffee shop, her knees drawn tight to her chest, arms wrapped around her soaked hoodie. Her hair stuck to her face, her socks were wet, and the streetlights reflected puddles that had nowhere else to go. It was after midnight. She hadn't eaten in almost 24 hours. Her stomach was quiet, but her spirit was louder than ever, pleading with heaven, wondering if God had forgotten the woman who used to sing in the choir and pass out flyers after Sunday service. A black SUV slowed near the curb. Angel didn't lift her head. People passed her every day, some glancing, some ignoring, all moving on. But the SUV didn't drive off. A door opened, footsteps, leather shoes, hesitant, then a voice. "Excuse me." She looked up, startled, eyes wide, arms tightening. The man didn't step closer. He stayed beneath the umbrella, careful not to alarm her. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "Are you Angel Mark?" Her lips parted, her voice was faint. "Do I know you?" The man removed his umbrella just enough for the light to hit his face. He was in his mid-30s, clean-cut, tailored coat, but it was his expression, calm, kind, respectful, that made her pause. "I've been looking for you," he said. Angel blinked up at him, completely still. "You've been—" "What?" she asked, wary but not unkind. The man nodded. "My name is Aidan Mason. I'm the CEO of Mason & Rowe Group." She furrowed her brows. I know it sounds random, he added quickly, but months ago you attended a community entrepreneurship event in Brooklyn. You submitted a concept, something about mobile design pods, budget-friendly event branding, and scalable decor for youth programs. Angel sat up straighter, stunned. That event had been 6 months ago, back when she was still married to Oliver and desperate for something of her own. I remember submitting something, she said slowly. Didn't think it went anywhere. It did, Aidan said. Our junior team flagged it. They were flawed. Your proposal didn't have funding behind it, but it had vision. It made its way across my desk. I made a note to reach out, but when we tried contacting you, your number was disconnected. Angel exhaled, the memory cutting through her. It had changed after the divorce, when she got rid of the phone Oliver paid for. I asked our community division to track you down. Discreetly, he continued. Then a few days ago, I saw a video from a shelter that was distributing care kits. You were in the background, helping organize items. Her eyes widened. You saw that? Aidan smiled gently. And I recognized the same spirit from your proposal, someone trying to build something, even when she had nothing. He took a soft step forward. I didn't come here to rescue you. I came because I believe in you, and because I think the world hasn't seen half of what you're capable of. Angel hadn't realized how deeply she was shaking, until Aidan offered a clean, dry handkerchief from his pocket. She took it with quiet thanks. I changed my number, she said softly. After the divorce, I didn't want to be reachable by anyone. He nodded with understanding. Makes sense. Why go through the trouble? She asked. People send in ideas all the time. Most of them end up in the trash. Yours didn't. Why? Aidan glanced down, then back at her. Because most people pitch from strategy. You pitch from heart. It was clear you weren't just building a business, you were creating experiences. Angel looked away, swallowing the lump rising in her throat. Honestly, she said, I thought I was done. I don't have anything left. She met his eyes. You still have vision, he said. And vision doesn't disappear just because a door was slammed in your face. A car honked in the distance. Rain still poured. But for the first time in weeks, Angel felt something settle in her chest, and that scared her more than the storm. Aidan didn't offer money. He didn't flash credentials or mention partnerships. He simply said, Would you allow me to drive you somewhere warm? Angel hesitated. He read her hesitation. You don't have to say yes. You don't owe me anything. I'll give you my card. You can call tomorrow if you want to meet. She studied him. He didn't press, didn't hover, so she nodded. I'll ride with you, but only to a diner. I haven't had real food in 2 days. Aidan chuckled gently. Fair enough. They stopped at a quiet late-night spot in Harlem. He ordered 2 grilled cheese sandwiches and soup. She devoured hers without apology. Between bites, she asked him about his company, a private firm that supported creative entrepreneurs in marginalized communities. I don't just fund brands, he said. I fund voices. Angel said little about her past, but her eyes told more than her words. And Aidan didn't ask for the details. He simply listened. That night, fate didn't roar. It whispered, through warm soup, dry socks he bought from a pharmacy nearby, and a silence that felt safe instead of lonely. When they stepped outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle. Aidan walked her to the car. Angel, he said, I have a guest apartment over my garage. Private entry, safe. I'm not asking you to say yes, but it's there if you want somewhere stable to sleep. She hesitated. I'm not trying to blur lines, he said. This isn't a rescue, it's a door, one you can walk through if you want to. No contracts, no pressure, no conditions. Angel searched his face. She saw no pity, only respect, and something deeper, something she hadn't seen in a long time, care, without control. I'll take 1 night, she said. Just to rest, then I'll figure out next steps. He nodded. That's all I hoped for. The guest house was warm, with soft lighting, towels folded on the bed, and a basket with basic toiletries and a note. You are welcome here, for however long you need. Angel sat on the edge of the bed, eyes burning. She hadn't just been offered shelter. She'd been offered dignity. and for the first time since she lost everything. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the small guest apartment like it had never left her life. Angel sat up slowly, sheets warm against her skin, the faint scent of lavender floating through the space. For a moment, she forgot where she was. But then she looked around, not at luxury or wealth, but at quiet kindness. A small breakfast basket had been left at the door. Inside were warm croissants, fruit, and a handwritten card. "You don't owe me anything, but if you'd like a tour of our creative department, I'd love to show you where your ideas first took root. Aiden." Angel held the card for a long moment. Later that afternoon, she joined him at Mason & Rowe's creative branch office in the Upper West Side. It wasn't a skyscraper. It was a restored brick building filled with light, plants, and energy. He introduced her to a team of designers, coordinators, and interns, all from different backgrounds, all passionate. The team applauded. Angel's eyes brimmed with disbelief, but no one looked at her with pity. Only respect. After the tour, Aiden pulled her aside. "I meant what I said," he said gently. "You don't have to do anything, but if you're open, there's a position here. Junior creative consultant, low pressure, part-time to start. You set the pace." Angel stared at him. "Why are you being so generous?" Aiden shrugged. "I've seen what happens when potential goes unsupported. I'd rather see what happens when it gets watered." Angel accepted the role, not because she felt ready, but because something inside her said, "This time, this might be different," and it was. Her first week, Aiden told her, "Come in whenever you feel up to it. No badge, no punch clock, just energy and creativity." She spent hours reviewing projects, assisting with mood boards, offering ideas for community-driven events. Her touch wasn't loud, it was thoughtful. Her edits turned corporate blandness into human-centered brilliance. Aiden never hovered. He didn't micromanage or expect her to stay late. He respected her space and always ended meetings with, "Let me know what you need." One afternoon, she stayed after hours, cleaning up loose sketches from a whiteboard. Aiden walked in, saw her organizing, and instead of thanking her, he joined her. No conversation, no need for one, just silent collaboration. He noticed her pause once, hands tightening. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm just not used to being somewhere that doesn't demand I prove myself every second." Aiden met her gaze. "You've already proven something greater, that you keep showing up. It wasn't flattery, it was truth." And Angel exhaled again. This wasn't a rescue. It was restoration. As weeks passed, late nights became part of their rhythm. They stayed after others left, not because of deadlines, but because time simply moved differently when they were in the same room. They reviewed event mock-ups together, passed sketches back and forth, argued playfully over font choices. When Angel made a sarcastic remark, Aiden countered with something even drier. They started joking in shorthand, developing an ease that was new to her, safe but charged. One evening, they worked on a pitch for a youth initiative event. Angel suggested a layout involving murals painted live by local teen artists. Aiden paused. "That's brilliant." She smiled, caught off guard. "It's just an idea." "It's the kind of idea that turns spaces into stories," he said. They sat in silence afterward, but it wasn't awkward. It was filled with something soft. Aiden offered to walk her back to the guest house. Rain had just begun to fall again, but not hard. As they shared the umbrella, Angel asked, "Do you always show up for people like this?" Aiden looked down at her. "Not always." She turned her face toward him, searching. Why me? But his silence was anything but empty. The air between them shifted slowly. Not in declarations, not in bold confessions, in glances held just a little longer, in hands brushing as they reached for the same pen, in laughter that lingered between pauses. Angel caught herself thinking about his smile while washing dishes. She found herself replaying certain words he'd said on her walk home, not because they were poetic, but because they made her feel seen. Aiden never crossed lines, but his care was steady. When she forgot her scarf one windy morning, he left one draped across her desk with a sticky note, soft. "Like your energy, stay warm." One Friday evening, they sat on the rooftop of the building with tea mugs in hand. The city buzzed below, Angel leaned against the railing, hoodie pulled tight. "You really don't ask a lot of questions," she said. "I try not to interrogate people who are still healing," he replied. She turned to him. "You ever think about what healing even looks like?" Aidan took a breath. "Yeah, sometimes I think it looks like letting someone catch their breath without asking when they're going to start running again." That night, when they parted ways, their fingers brushed. She didn't pull away immediately. It had been almost 2 months since that rainy night on the street. Angel was no longer sleeping in shelters. She had a drawer full of clothes in the guest house. She had a small desk with her name on it. She even had a journal where she had started sketching again, not just for work, but for herself. But one evening, after they presented a successful community event to a group of city investors, something shifted. They stood by the elevator, waiting. The glow of accomplishment wrapped around them. Aidan turned to her and said, "You did that." "We did," she corrected. He shook his head gently. "No, I just created the space. You filled it." His tone softened. "Angel, I need to say something. I don't just want to help you rise," he said. "I want to rise with you." Her breath caught. "I want to be beside you when the world recognizes what I already see. I want to be the hand that lifts, not the one that drags." She blinked fast. Once. Twice. He didn't move closer. He simply waited. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel overwhelmed by someone's love. She felt ready to consider it. The day Angel registered her business name, she didn't cry. She held the certificate in her hand, reading the ink-stamped lettering over and over. Mark of Grace Creative Events, LLC. Grace. Not just for the elegance her designs carried, but for the grace she extended to herself through every trial. Aidan stood beside her outside the office, 2 coffees in hand. "I hope you know this is only the beginning," he said. She smiled, the kind that carried both triumph and nerves. "The beginning is the scariest part." He handed her the coffee. "Maybe, but it's also the most sacred." The company started small, a 2-room space above a modest commercial bakery. Angel used the main office as a design studio and the smaller room to store supplies, linens, lighting concepts, floral mock-ups, and sample layouts. Aidan didn't fund the whole thing outright. Instead, he became her first investor, seed money with clear boundaries, no controlling stake, and one condition: your vision leads. They set regular check-ins, but Aidan never overstepped. He let her fall, stumble, and soar, without trying to steer the wind. Angel spent hours building vendor lists, cold-calling corporate offices, offering free mock-ups for non-profit galas just to get her foot in the door. When clients walked in, they didn't see a startup. They saw confidence, clarity, and creativity rooted in authenticity. Angel didn't just pitch events, she pitched atmosphere. It started with one small contract, a fundraising brunch for a local women's mentorship program. Angel transformed a dull multi-purpose hall into an enchanting scene of soft golds, floral centerpieces made from repurposed books, and handwritten name cards for every seat. The event trended locally on social media under the tag #designed by Grace. By the next month, she was booked for a tech startup launch party. Then came a boutique hotel opening. Then a political fundraiser. Each event was visually distinct but carried her signature touch, warmth that didn't sacrifice style. Clients raved. Vendors asked to be added to her preferred partner list. Bloggers wrote features. Photos were reshared across platforms. The name Angel Mark became synonymous with tasteful reinvention and mindful design. When a well-known wellness influencer tagged her in a post after an event, inquiries doubled in 24 hours. She hired 2 part-time assistants, then 4. Aidan watched quietly, never needing to be tagged, never asking for public credit. He declined when a publication asked for a quote. "As her mentor, this is her spotlight," he said. "She doesn't need a shadow." Angel's face began appearing on speaker panels, industry conferences, and community entrepreneurship events. And every time she stood behind a podium, she wore something simple, smiled with honesty, and told her story not as a survivor, but as a builder. Within 2 years, Angel transitioned from vendor to visionary. Her face was on marketing brochures for creative business forums. She was invited to speak at entrepreneurship programs across the East Coast, especially those supporting women of color. Her panels weren't just about decor, they were about dignity. She taught young entrepreneurs how to pitch without apologizing for their roots. She shared how she once packed her business dreams between shelter curfews and rainy nights. And how success didn't come from revenge. It came from reclaiming her own power. Angel reinvested in local youth programs, launching a grant initiative called First Light, which funded the first $1,000 for new ventures started by young women between the ages of 16 and 24. She didn't just become a CEO, she became a movement. Her office expanded to a floor-wide studio in Harlem. Her company's motto, designing spaces that heal and honor, became more than branding. It was culture. During one radio interview, the host asked her, "What's the best part of your success?" Angel didn't flinch. Not having to shrink to make others comfortable, she replied. "And showing up every day as the woman I prayed I'd become." Through it all, Aiden never made her journey about him. He cheered from the wings, supported where needed, and showed up when it mattered. When Angel received her first award, Innovator of the Year by a national women's enterprise group, he sat in the audience, clapping quietly, the only one not taking out his phone to record. After the ceremony, reporters asked for a quote. He simply said, "She didn't just build a brand, she built a blueprint for how to rise with integrity." When they attended events together, he never led her by the hand in front of cameras. He walked beside her, always at her pace. They were spotted often, but never made into gossip. Their connection was obvious to anyone paying attention, a shared glance, a small touch at the elbow, the way they leaned in to speak to each other over background noise. Angel once told a friend, "Aiden doesn't complete me. He holds space for me to be whole." When business life got overwhelming, he didn't tell her to slow down. He asked, "What do you need more of today? Support, silence, or space?" It wasn't a fairy tale, it was better. Their love was grown, intentional, layered with late-night takeout on the studio floor, forehead kisses after long meetings, and soft glances exchanged across crowded rooms. One evening, they walked along the waterfront after a pitch celebration. Angel had just closed her biggest deal yet, a 3-city campaign for a national campaign. She laughed into the wind, the moon catching the curls she hadn't bothered to pin back. "You look proud of me," she said playfully. "I am," Aiden said. She turned to him, her expression soft. "Why?" "Because you never lost your heart, even when the world tried to take it. The kiss that followed wasn't rushed. It didn't come with music or applause. Certain. The kind of kiss that didn't ask for more. It just affirmed what was already there." Later that night, as they lay fully clothed in her living room, wrapped in blankets, her head on his chest, he whispered, "I never wanted to save you." She smiled. "I know." And for the first time since her life collapsed, Angel didn't feel like a survivor anymore. She felt loved. The conference room atop the Monroe Bishop Tower was nothing short of intimidating. Glass walls stretched around the high-rise meeting floor, revealing the Manhattan skyline in all its glittering authority. Inside, a mahogany table stretched the length of the room, surrounded by some of the most powerful corporate figures in real estate, tech, and infrastructure. But today wasn't just about business, it was about position and power. Angel adjusted the cuff of her cream silk blazer as she took her seat at the head of the table. Her presence was unmistakable, commanding, elegant, and rooted in something deeper than strategy. It was legacy. She wasn't here as a consultant. She wasn't someone's guest. She was the key shareholder in one of the fastest-rising creative property redevelopment firms in New York, Mark Grace Capital Events, now the lead branding partner for a cross-industry merger between 3 major corporations. And today, she was running the show. The assistant handed her the printed agenda. She didn't flinch. Her notes were already memorized, her team briefed, and her vision crystal clear. Behind her were glass display panels showcasing some of her firm's award-winning projects, once abandoned properties that now buzzed with life, light, and purpose. Investors had asked for someone with vision. They got Angel. Now the room waited. Oliver Emsley entered the room with a confident stride, a silver pen clipped neatly to his dark pinstripe suit. He was here representing his company, Emsley Equity Partners, a legacy firm with deep roots in old money real estate and finance. For him, this merger was supposed to be a routine acquisition. Until he saw her. His steps faltered. At the head of the table, poised, polished, unbothered, sat the woman he once reduced to nothing more than a liability. Angel. She didn't move, didn't blink. She continued reviewing the packet in front of her, her posture relaxed but unshakable. He cleared his throat. "I wasn't informed you'd be chairing the meeting." Angel finally looked up. Her voice was composed. "The email was sent to your assistant 2 weeks ago." Someone from the board nodded. "Yes." Angel's firm was unanimously selected to lead creative integration for all 3 merger divisions. She's also a minority stakeholder now, courtesy of the Community Redevelopment Clause. Oliver's eyes narrowed, caught between confusion and disbelief. "I see. No apology, no greeting, no familiarity, only the professional chill of a woman who no longer saw him as relevant." He sat across from her, trying to recover his breath as the rest of the executive team entered. Angel didn't glance at him again. Instead, she continued with her outline: strategy rollout, digital design plan, rebranding language. She spoke with measured conviction, fluid clarity, and a calm that left no room for interpretation. She didn't need validation. She was the moment. And Oliver was just now realizing what he gave up. Chioma arrived 5 minutes late, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she made her entrance with her usual air of entitlement. She was dressed sharply in a red power dress, her curls bouncing as she took a seat beside Oliver, who had requested she accompany him for PR optics. Chioma placed her tablet on the table, barely looking up, until she noticed Angel, commanding. Her mouth parted slightly. "Wait." She leaned toward Oliver, voice barely a whisper. "Is that Angel? That Angel?" Oliver didn't answer. Chioma blinked rapidly. "Since when does she—" Before she could finish, Angel looked directly at her. Angel didn't blink. Chioma forced a smile. "Well, this is a surprise." Angel gave a polite nod. "Good morning, Chioma. Let's focus on the agenda." There was nothing casual about her tone. No room for social chat. No space for rehashing betrayal. Chioma shifted uncomfortably, caught between embarrassment and indignation. She whispered again to Oliver, "You didn't say she was involved at this level." "I didn't know," he hissed back. And that was the problem. Chioma had always assumed Angel was soft, easy to silence. Now she was watching a woman she once mocked lead a room filled with legacy tycoons. As Angel clicked through her presentation, her poise unsettled Chioma more than any words could. She couldn't shake the image, Angel at the center, Chioma on the side, and Oliver, silent. Just as the meeting hit a transition point, the assistant opened the door again. "Excuse the interruption. Mr. Aidan Cross is here to join the strategy debrief, per the revised board directive." Heads turned. He walked directly to her, paused, and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Nothing dramatic, but the room noticed. Angel smiled up at him, warm, grounded. "Glad you made it," she said. "Wouldn't miss it," he replied, then took the seat beside her reserved for partner consultant, Cross Ventures. Chioma watched, eyes wide. Oliver stared, lips tight. The man they had dismissed as just a tech guy was not only part of the merger, he was listed as co-investor in the Experience Equity Division. He was also clearly something more. During the next segment, Angel led the room, while Aidan supported her with analytics and tech integration insights. They flowed effortlessly, finishing each other's points without stepping on each other's lines. The synergy was undeniable. After the meeting, Aidan leaned closer, whispering with a trace of humor, "Your presentation slides put mine to shame." Angel chuckled softly. "You're lucky I love you, or I'd charge you for copying my layout style." The word love was spoken so casually, yet it echoed across the room like thunder. Oliver dropped his pen. Chioma looked down, and everyone understood. The woman Oliver threw away was now cherished by a man who never needed to take credit for her brilliance. He just stood beside it, When the post-meeting photos were released by the merger's press team later that evening, the image that went viral wasn't of the company's CEOs shaking hands. It was Angel, standing between two banners of her company's flagship projects, flanked by Aidan on her right and the board chair on her left. She looked radiant, resolved, unbothered. It wasn't the success that haunted him, it was the realization that he never knew who she truly was. He mistook her softness for weakness, her loyalty for desperation, her ambition for naivete. Now the world applauded her, while his name trended for outdated ethics and tone-deaf leadership. He had a seat at the table, but no voice that mattered. Chioma tried to salvage the narrative with a PR post that evening, but the internet wasn't interested in her captions. They were reposting a quote from Angel's presentation. Power isn't about who speaks the loudest. It's about who builds something that speaks even when they're silent. Aidan posted a photo of Angel reviewing blueprints with interns. Leadership looks like this. The comment section flooded with applause. And as for Oliver? He watched quietly as the woman he discarded became the woman the world now followed. The boardroom was buzzing after the merger announcement, but Angel had already moved on. Her hand rested gently on Aidan's forearm as they shared a quiet glance, one that spoke volumes of mutual respect and partnership. She'd come so far from the tearful woman standing barefoot in the rain. As she made her way toward the exit, she felt a presence fall in step behind her. Aidan's touch on her elbow paused her. "Angel, Oliver's following. I'll be close." She nodded once, then turned, and there he was, Oliver. Not the polished billionaire who once left her homeless, but a man visibly aged by consequence. The arrogance was gone. In its place, hesitation. "Angel," he said, voice low, eyes unable to meet hers for more than a second. "Please, can we talk?" She motioned toward the hallway. Her stride was elegant, unbothered. The hallway's quiet made his words more fragile. "I was wrong," Oliver began. "I didn't see your value. Not truly. I thought money, power, and alliances were everything. I didn't understand what I had." Angel tilted her head slightly, not with anger, but curiosity, as if she were studying a man she no longer knew. "You saw what you wanted to see," she replied calmly. "Not who I was, not what I carried. You didn't listen. You assumed I needed fixing, when all I ever wanted was respect." His jaw clenched. "I know that now. I lost something priceless." She blinked slowly. "You didn't lose me. You gave me away." He swallowed hard. "Is there any part of you that—" She stopped him gently with her palm raised. "No, Oliver, this isn't one of those stories where the past begs to rewrite the present. I've healed. I've grown. I've loved and been loved better." Behind her, Aidan appeared, giving her space but never far. "I never hated you," Angel said softly. "That would have taken energy I needed to rebuild myself." Oliver's eyes burned, the man who once stood above her now clearly beneath the weight of his own regret. "You know what hurts," she continued. "It's not the betrayal. It's that you taught me to doubt my own worth. That's what took years to unlearn." He looked down, unable to argue. "I've changed, Angel. I swear to you." She shook her head gently. "This isn't about you anymore. You see, the problem was never my worth," she said clearly, her voice echoing with calm power. "It was your inability to recognize it, and I won't waste another moment trying to convince anyone of my value. I am not auditioning for love. I am the role." He opened his mouth, but words failed. He had come expecting maybe a tear, maybe an opening, but this wasn't the woman he once left behind. This was Angel, the CEO, the founder, the woman whose story no longer began with him. "I wish you well," she said simply. Oliver blinked. "That's it? That's mercy." She turned and walked away, not out of pride or vengeance, but because bridges burned with lies and condescension aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some are meant to remind. As Angel walked back into the meeting room, she didn't just carry her success, she carried grace, power, peace. Aidan greeted her with a soft smile, sliding a hand behind her back as they returned to their seats. She wasn't just a woman who survived betrayal, she became a force, and for everyone watching the story unfold, for every viewer who's been underestimated, discarded, or silenced, this moment was for them. If you believe every storm has a purpose, comment. She didn't break. She became And make sure you're subscribed to Mr. Victor Storytime for more empowering stories. Angel stood by the wide window of their shared loft overlooking downtown Houston, her arms folded softly across her chest, a calm smile settling on her lips. The evening sun filtered through the cream linen curtains, casting a soft glow on the vision board she'd tacked to the far wall. Aidan came up behind her, hands slipping around her waist. "You've been staring at it for 20 minutes, he teased gently. "I'm trying to see the version of our life that doesn't look like everyone else's," she murmured. They weren't planning a red carpet wedding. No ballroom dancers, no sky-written proposals. What they planned was real, intentional, a future that meant more than just diamonds and dazzle. They'd both seen what shallow love looked like. They wanted something deeper, built on mutual respect, laughter in the kitchen, quiet nights under one blanket, and real vision that touched others. They created a list, a shared fund for young female entrepreneurs, quarterly mentorship retreats, monthly dinners with women from local shelters. Their future wasn't just about them. It was about legacy. "We'll build it like a good home," Aidan said, tracing her fingers. "Strong foundation, honest materials, big enough to welcome others in," and Angel nodded. Because that was the life she wanted to live into. The wedding took place in her mother's backyard, beneath the same willow tree Angel used to sit under with her sketchpad. Her mother arranged the folding chairs. Aidan's father baked the sourdough rolls. Her former co-workers from the floral shop helped with the centerpieces, not orchids, but sunflowers, lilies, and sprigs of rosemary. Chioma was absent. So was Oliver. And strangely, that brought no ache, only peace. Angel wore a tea-length dress, ivory with embroidered lace on the sleeves. Aidan wore a linen shirt, rolled up at the cuffs and no tie, just as she loved him, calm, grounded, real. They exchanged vows with no microphones, just their voices. Her voice cracked once when she said, "You never asked me to be perfect, just to be true." The guests cried. Not because it was extravagant, but because it was honest. After the small dinner and fire pit toasts, they danced barefoot under string lights, laughing like two souls that finally found shelter in each other. No tabloids, no photographers, just meaning, family, and joy. 2 months after the wedding, Angel and Aidan launched Phoenix Rising, a foundation dedicated to supporting women who had been abandoned, displaced, or underestimated. Their first event was a dinner with women from 3 local shelters, hosted in the same banquet hall where Angel once swept floors. She stood on that stage not as a volunteer, not as a survivor, but as a leader. Flanked by Aidan and 3 of her newly hired staff, they donated startup grants, offered co-working space, and even secured partnerships with small business mentors. Angel also began hosting quarterly brunches for young girls who wanted to go into decor and event planning. She gave real advice about grit, grace, and not compromising your value for anyone's approval. One girl asked her, "What would you tell your old self if you could?" Angel's reply was simple: "You were never the problem. You were just waiting on the right environment to bloom." They built a program that now ran in 4 cities. But more than that, they built something rooted in purpose. Something she could have never imagined when sleeping on that church bench months ago. Late one evening, Angel sat on the balcony with a cup of herbal tea and her journal open across her lap. She didn't write about Oliver anymore, or the betrayal, or the day she found herself crying in a borrowed hoodie behind a food pantry. Tonight she wrote about sunlight, about peace, about the way Aidan made her laugh when the world got too serious, about her mom's smile, about building a life that didn't need to be broadcast to be beautiful. Aidan came out with their soft blanket and draped it around her shoulders before sitting beside her. "You writing something powerful?" She shrugged. "Maybe just something true." She showed him the page. It read, "I wasn't rescued. I remembered who I was before they forgot. I chose to build instead of bleed. I loved again, without fear. And I live now, fully, freely, finally." Aidan kissed her knuckles. "That should be on a wall." Angel smiled. "It's already written in my life." They sat in silence, not needing to prove anything anymore, because the most radical thing she'd done was rebuild, with love, purpose, and no apology. The crowd in the downtown Los Angeles Civic Auditorium stood quiet, waiting. Rows of seats stretched across the grand hall, filled with women of all ages, some in their teens, others middle-aged, and many just like Angel had been once, searching, cracked but unbroken, still holding on to the tiniest thread of hope. The host of the event, a former television journalist, took the stage. Today's final keynote is a woman who needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway. She's a founder, a mentor, a survivor, a mother, and the voice behind Phoenix Rising, which has now served over 10,000 women nationwide. But more than that, she's proof that beauty and strength can rise from brokenness. Angel stepped forward in a soft cream blazer, wide-leg pants and low heels. No flashy designer tags, just poise, peace, power. The applause shook the room, but Angel didn't rush. She approached the podium slowly, steady, letting the moment breathe. 3 years ago, she began. I was sitting on a church bench, clutching my suitcase and a paper bag of food, and I felt like the world had just tossed me out of its plans. She paused. Her eyes swept across the room. But let me tell you what else happened 3 years ago. I started rebuilding, not because I was brave, but because I was tired of surviving and ready to live. The room quieted again, listening with their hearts. Midway through her talk, Angel paused and scanned the front row. A young girl, maybe 19, sat with a notebook clutched against her chest. Her eyes shined the same way Angel's once had, curious but guarded, hopeful but exhausted. Angel smiled. She saw herself there, not the woman on stage, the girl who once believed she had to shrink to be loved, who mistook red flags for temporary storms, who thought her worth depended on who wanted her. I see you, Angel said into the microphone. Yes, you, with the notebook, with the questions in your heart that you're afraid to say out loud. The girl blinked hard, trying not to cry. Angel continued, voice unwavering. You don't have to settle for scraps when you were born to be whole. You don't have to chase someone who keeps walking away. You are not hard to love. They were just not ready for your kind of power. Women in the audience wiped tears. Some reached for the hands beside them. Angel stepped away from the podium and began pacing the edge of the stage, closer to the crowd. Too many of us have been taught to dim our light just so someone else can stay comfortable in the dark, she said. But not anymore. Not today. Not again. The energy shifted. Heads nodded. Hearts opened. From the side of the stage, Aidan stood near the velvet curtain, watching. His hands rested calmly in his pockets, but his eyes followed every word that fell from his wife's mouth. Every gesture, every pause, every truth she let rise to the surface. She looked so sure, so rooted. Angel returned to the center and wrapped up her speech. Some of you came here thinking the goal is to get back what you lost, that the person who left, the job that ended, the betrayal that almost broke you, that those things still own your story. She shook her head. No, sis. The goal isn't to win them back. It's to win you back. A wave of cheers spread across the auditorium. She raised her hand slightly and delivered her final words with power. Don't mourn who left you. Celebrate who stayed. And most of all, celebrate who you became. The room erupted. People stood, clapped, cried. Aidan, still off stage, wiped his eye with the edge of his sleeve. She'd told him once that her voice used to shake when she spoke in public. Not anymore. Because now, Angel wasn't trying to be palatable. She was trying to be free. She stepped off stage into his arms. You were incredible, he whispered. She chuckled, forehead against his. We were. You were part of this too. No, Angel, Aidan whispered, pulling her into a full embrace. This was you. You, Rose, Victor family. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. Your pain doesn't define you. Like, share, and subscribe so we can reach more hearts with powerful stories like this.